It's a nice little segue into probably the last part of the discussion. One thing that we mentioned earlier on, and I'd like to get the perspective, is sort of regulatory issues around adopting some of this cloud strategy. It is real. We've already seen stories in Europe whereby people are rescinding their applications out in the cloud back internally because they've suddenly realized that where their application and data is being residing actually isn't a place that people can view it quite openly. And I think it'd be very interesting to get your perspective in terms of local business needs and regulatory requirements, which would sort of drive a cloud strategy much more locally rather than allow the cloud to be anywhere.
I was in the States recently and attending an outsourcing conference, and I had a chance to speak to he's the CTO for a state, and I was pleasantly because I approached the subject on moving of data. Today you have consolidation of. And many financial institutes in this part of the world already consolidate their data centers. And you should use financial institutes from data secrecy, confidentiality, they're quite up there. Mm-hmm. So these guys are the most sensitive, if you like. So if you use them as a yardstick, it's happening now. As I told you, we've got people consolidating their data centers in the region from China, Japan, down south, from Australia to centralized locations. And they're looking for good data center infrastructure spaces. The challenge initially a few years ago when people were talking about data center consolidation and stuff like that was getting the central banks to approve the moving. But what I've seen clearly change in the last 5-6 years is there's a huge acceptance and allowance for this. I think there's been some barter trade going on between financial institutes and central banks, etc. But essentially they today have, and many organizations today, very large ones, large financial institutes, run their data centers outside of the country at which they do business. So that's a very key point. That's point number one. It used to be a big issue between Malaysia and Singapore. In the years before, there used to be issues of how to transfer data between the two countries. There was political issues. I think there's very little commercial issues, to be honest. It quite easily could be done. And coming back to my point about my visit to the States, and a lot of these are done by multinationals that come out of Europe and US. And this particular state minister, he said, we're outsourcing everything. That's my direction. We're outsourcing everything. And then I said, look, we're coming out of this place in Asia. Well, we will have perhaps a presence in the States, but would you outsource your data to us? And he said, well, yeah. Then that sounded really nice.
And I think that's the key difference, though, isn't it, really? If you look at the sort of environments that we talk about today, where the data is residing in a secure environment that is unique for that particular client, vis-a-vis in the sort of cloud environment, it's multi-tenancy. I think that's the sort of key differentiator and some of the key dynamics that companies are facing.
A private cloud versus a public cloud.
Well, that's basically it, very much so, yeah. And I think that's the sort of key dilemma, as you rightly point out, that there's not a big issue around intercompany sharing of facilities, but the thought of, Bank X and Bank Y being almost next to each other on the same infrastructure as you described. And moving maybe onto one last subject before we wrap. One of the key things that I think we're hearing about today is this notion of IT services, opposed to server storage, etc. There's much more of a prevalent requirement to maybe move forward in a much more services-orientated capability, which really then starts to raise the debate around the relevance of the IT organization going forward. And I'd really like to get the panel's view on how they see the IT organization within companies having to maybe transform or change in order to adopt this new approach and really make it a success, and so that businesses feel value out of that new capability rather than it be seen as an inhibitor.
I think as we move majority of the IT services to cloud service provider or managed services and all that, the role of IT will need to change. And I think the value of IT in driving business transformation or business changes, lies in how effective IT partners with the business. And so we got to basically relook at the role of IT in an organization, and also remodel that, and realign the people and the IT processes to make sure that we, partner effectively with the business stakeholders, understanding their need. We've got to understand the business as well as the business stakeholders, if not better, so that we can actually, bridge IT and the technology with business. I think this is the role for IT in the future. And the other role is also, we talk about this cloud computing and all that. There's a lot of governance issue that we need to look after, security, governance, and all that. So I think IT can also play a very effective role in that, in terms of IT governance, and also setting the IT strategy and also architecture. So those are the future role of the IT guys, like me.
Yeah.
I mean, in 5 years' time, you can probably see some of the common applications like messaging and collaboration, office, productivity tools, going out to the cloud service provider, and even the infrastructure, the Intel servers and all that, storage and whatnot. So the main bulk of the IT people's work now will be moving out to the external provider. And so the IT folks will need to move up the value chain, as in leveraging on their functional and business knowledge, in engaging the business in terms of finding value, for IT.
Just from a service provider's perspective, do you see that approach changing the way that you will drive business back into the market?
A lot of what Kachai had shared, I think it's very close to home. We engage in such scenarios. We're aware of that. I think the major shift is an area which we forget, and even Kachai mentioned this now. Intel servers, he sees that because that's really the non-core of his critical applications, if you like. Now, the challenge would be at which point would the organizations, and the challenge would be, the key point would be, at which point would you be willing to give out your I series, your P series, or your Unix servers that run mission critical applications, and keep perhaps the application bit, if you like, to yourself, and maybe at some point even give some part of that out, and then functionally you guys start focusing on that. I think that evolution is different for different organizations, and it's done in stages. So people who are starting off at a certain age, people who have legacy systems, like you guys have huge legacy systems. Been around for a while, and so are many other customers out there for us. Now, the issue for us would be how to manage that change, if you like. And this is the exciting bit, really, more than the concerning bit. From a partner point of view, if we know how to engage some of this, the CIO today is changing his shape and what his needs are. I think the vendors need to plug into that.
Andre, any final comment?
The CIO role will definitely evolve. It will not look like the same 5 years down the road. I completely agree with you. And I know all the commodity things like the communication, the office application. Most of it, could be just streamed. Why would you install the application on your desktop anymore? You just stream it when you need it. For instance, when you need to open a certain document, the document. As long as you know the type of documents, the applications can be out there. You stream it, you open the document, you change it, you close it, and that's it. So that will simplify as well. The way you manage your workplace environment. You're right. You would have 2 or 3 devices, and you won't be able to open your documents seamlessly and without thinking about, I need to download that application to the document. That concept is going to go away. But more importantly, as well, I think that the key thing is going to be the evolution about the enterprise application, the real crucial enterprise application, your CRM, your ERP, your procurement application, and there's going to be a slow move in moving that outside because there is first a huge investment in those things, and there's huge complexity and a lot of the insurance, for instance, they have competitive software in there. The way you have your large business analysis, your BI application, your data warehouse application, where you extract intelligence out of this, and you have developed very elaborate software to analyze the market trends or your customer trends, etc. These things you want to keep to yourself, I think, and you would not leverage things out there because they're your core competence.